Welcome back to the Foundry by Forge College. So in our last explainer, we tackled client-side responsiveness, making sure your decentralized apps actually feel snappy. But today, we're leveling up. We're looking at a completely different beast, handling massive Web3 assets. Because let's be real, keeping your UI responsive is one thing, but keeping it responsive when you're trying to pull down a multi-gigabyte 3D model from a decentralized network, yeah, that is a whole new challenge.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the heavyweight problem, move into the foundation of chunking and CIDs, pull the levers of hot versus cold storage, review the menu of 3 winning strategies, and finally, plan your next steps.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the heavyweight problem, looking at when assets get massive.
Now, up until now, you're probably used to dealing with tiny JSON metadata files, right? They're super lightweight, easy to pass around, and they barely make a dent in your bandwidth. But what happens when your NFT is, say, a massive multi-gigabyte 3D model for a metaverse game, or a 2-hour high-res video? The operational demands just change completely. You can't just throw a giant file at the blockchain or IPFS and cross your fingers. I mean, have you ever tried loading a 1-gigabyte NFT on a smartphone while you're on a spotty cellular connection? You get that dreaded spinning wheel of death. Heck, your browser might even crash. And it's not just a terrible user experience. If you're the developer trying to keep that colossal file actively online, the hidden costs for bandwidth and continuous storage can literally be astronomical. So we need to preserve the authenticity and decentralization of the asset, sure, but we got to keep retrieval fast and, actually affordable.
And that brings us to Section 2, Foundation, where we'll look at chunking and CIDs.
To fix this heavyweight problem, we really need underlying mechanics that prevent decentralized networks from just buckling under the sheer weight of these massive files. And the absolute foundational mechanism here is chunking. Basically, this means breaking a large file down into a directed acyclic graph, or DAG, of smaller individually hashed blocks. Let's make this totally jargon-free. Think of a massive wheel of really expensive deli cheese. You wouldn't sell the entire wheel at once to a customer who just wants to make a single sandwich, right? No, you slice off exactly what they need. Well, chunking does the exact same thing for your files. Instead of one massive clunky transfer, chunking enables parallel transfers of smaller pieces. It allows for partial validation if something breaks mid-download. And it even lets you deduplicate data if multiple files happen to share the exact same chunks.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how content addressing ties all those individual chunks together. We use a CID, or content identifier, which is basically a cryptographic hash acting as a unique fingerprint for your data. When you have a massive chunked file, think of the top-level root CID as the table of contents in a massive multi-volume encyclopedia. That main table of contents doesn't hold all the actual text. Instead, it points to intermediate nodes, and those point to the exact smaller chunks or pages you actually need. It's brilliant because it ensures absolute block-level integrity without forcing you to load the entire library all at once.
Let's move right along to Section 3, the levers, comparing hot versus cold storage.
Because look, while chunking beautifully breaks your data down into manageable pieces, that doesn't magically keep it online. Pinning and persistence are the operational levers that actually keep your data alive and accessible across a distributed network. And here we hit the classic trade-off. Think of hot storage, like pinning files to IPFS nodes with CDNs, as keeping fresh fruit right on your kitchen counter. It's right there, it's immediate, great for quick snacking, and it's fast. But counter space is limited, and it's pretty expensive to maintain. On the flip side, cold storage, like Filecoin archival deals, well, that's your chest freezer out in the garage. Fantastic for long-term durability, great for storing huge surpluses incredibly cheaply, but it takes a lot longer to go out there, get it, and thaw it out. Ultimately, you want to use the hot layer for that immediate, snappy user experience and the cold layer for inexpensive, rock-solid long-term preservation.
So the crucial point is how we actually combine these concepts to protect the user. And we do it by building a multi-tier metadata structure. Think about the breakdown here. In your NFT's JSON, you don't just drop in one single CID. No, you include a 50 kilobyte thumbnail for quick gallery views, a 2 megabyte preview for the main page, and then the massive 1 gigabyte master asset. Designing it this way ensures that users, and their poor browsers, only load that heavy master file when they intentionally click to retrieve it. It completely stops browser crashes, saves massive amounts of bandwidth, and keeps your project lightning fast.
Which leads us nicely into Section 4, the menu, looking at 3 winning strategies. Now, as you might know from exploring the wider learning courses in the Forge College ecosystem, we always emphasize practical, real-world deployment patterns over pure theory. It's one thing to understand hot and cold storage conceptually, but how do you actually deploy this for a real NFT collection? Well, this decision matrix is basically your new best friend. Let's walk through it together. Strategy A is hot pinning plus a CDN. Super low latency but high recurring costs. It's absolutely perfect for bustling marketplaces where speed is just everything. Strategy B is cold archiving on a network like Filecoin. Your latency is definitely higher when you're retrieving for the first time, but the cost is incredibly low. That makes it the absolute best use case for those giant master files that rarely get downloaded but absolutely must survive forever. Then we've got strategy C, chunked streaming. By selectively pinning chunks, you get low to variable latency and moderate costs. This is exactly what you want for something like a high-res video NFT where progressive playback is expected. Truly understanding these trade-offs means you'll know exactly when to apply each strategy to your specific project.
All right, let's move to our final section, planning your next steps. You've got the menu, the levers, and the foundation. Now, here are the core takeaways for codifying a rock-solid persistence plan that perfectly balances your operational costs with your latency requirements. First, always separate your assets by their access pattern. Second, build your metadata with chunking and streaming in mind right from day one. Third, actually codify your pinning persistence plan. You need to know exactly what is hot and what is cold. And finally, tie all these choices back to your specific latency service level agreements and your budget. And this brilliantly illustrates our main goal here, relying on a hybrid approach. Using that hot layer for immediate UX and the cold layer for long-term durability is simply the ultimate best practice in Web3 storage.
So, I'm going to leave you with this question. What is your target monthly budget and latency SLA for your next big Web3 project? Seriously, think deeply about those numbers, because they will completely dictate your entire storage strategy. Having those answers ready will perfectly set you up for our next explainer, where we'll dive hands-on into actual retrieval workflows. Until then, keep building, keep experimenting, and be sure to visit forge.college to master more Web3 topics and check out our other incredible learning programs. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.